James mentioned, I spent the past 9 years at Glassdoor and currently transitioning to a new opportunity. And I had the great opportunity to join Glassdoor in its infancy, when the company was fewer than 50 people. And really no one had ever heard of Glassdoor. I actually have fond memories of sales calls where we were trying to get past a gatekeeper and they truly thought we were trying to get their door fixed. And that was obviously an awkward sales narrative that we had to back out of. But over the years, we had many iterations of our sales narrative, and Glassdoor went a long way from there. But in the early days, to build our revenue teams, obviously building playbooks and investing in the right sales tech stack was really crucial to us getting to where we eventually went, both in the US and across EMEA. But I'm going to focus today on sort of the less tactical, so you give you very tactical, important nugget of information. I want to focus on sort of beneath the playbook, sort of the foundations that you need to actually execute on the playbooks and pioneer adoption of the playbooks. So those three things are: one, prioritizing for people; two, building sales culture within your culture; and then three, leading with authenticity. So that's a lot. So hopefully I can get through it in the next 7 or so minutes. I think we have a little bit of extra time. But let's start with prioritizing for people. So one of the early sort of mistakes that I made in hiring people is getting like really excited by a CV that had maybe someone who had X big tech experience, maybe had worked at Google. They came in, they were articulate, they had some charisma. I felt like they would really be able to knock doors down for me. And eventually, 6 months in, we were wondering why this person who maybe even had gone to president's clubs at their previous employer, wasn't really successful at our organization. And they struggled getting sort of out of the gate fast. And part of that is because hiring for the right people, it really has to be backed into your sales motion. And if you're at a startup or a scale up, even that's vastly different than a large scaled company. So what I mean by sort of backing into your sales motion is figuring out what are the 2 or 3 really important characteristics that you need in someone who can sell your product and get it off the shelf quickly. So maybe you are selling a very transactional product and you need somebody who's incredibly hungry, has amazing stamina, and can be relentless every day doing hundreds and hundreds of calls and demos. And maybe that's the right person for your organization. Or maybe you have a longer sales cycle and you need someone who has incredible patience and consultative approach. And that's a different kind of sales person. And maybe you're selling a product that is great, but in a very competitive space. So with the level playing field equal, you've got to have somebody who go on the field and win no matter what, and is really keen at negotiating and very smart on their feet. We ended up with a different challenge, which was that we were selling a product that didn't have necessarily allocated budget, and we were solving a problem that our customer didn't necessarily know that they had, but they needed to solve yesterday. So this was a certain kind of sales prototype, I'd say. And I'm not trying to say that you should hire all the same people. I just mean choose those 3 to 4 non-negotiables that will help you sell your product, and then hire and build diversity around the nice to haves, like domain experience, like general gender diversity, ethnic diversity, socioeconomic backgrounds, strength players who will help build up your team. And that will help you build a really good foundational team that will sell quickly. So the next step is really, once you get those people in the door, how do you bring in more and more and more and ensure that they're accountable and able to execute on any playbooks that you build? And one of the ways that Glassdoor was able to do that is by building sales culture within your company culture. So not relying on your company culture may be great, but building a sales culture within that, leveraging your company culture, and then identifying, what are the values that you want your sales team to live and breathe every day. And for us, that was a couple of things. So we actually got some leaders. If you don't have tons of leaders in your organization, maybe just get people who aren't necessarily managers, but leaders within your organization into an offsite where you can sort of brainstorm and figure out, like, what is it that will make this organization culture really live and breathe and scale quickly. And for us, it was growth. So we needed people to have a growth mindset across the board, from leaders all the way to individual contributors. We needed everyone to be coachable. Results, not just hitting quota results, but also just doing the extra 10 calls, going the extra mile. Integrity, doing the right thing. We live in a high pressure sales environment. So doing the right thing is often difficult. So finding people who have really done that. And then team is never winning alone and playing. We used to say playing for the name on the front of the jersey instead of the back. So all of those actually that actually makes the word grit. So we kind of had 5. So we called it sales grit, and that was our culture. And we really, instead of just like putting posters on the walls and writing it down in pitch books and just kind of having words on pages, we really tried to make that the fabric of our organization and live and breathe those tenets of what makes our sales culture every day. And that means celebrating not just wins, but also celebrating instances perhaps when a sales rep had not taken that big deal because they knew it was going to be a bad deal, and maybe didn't hit their quota. But we wanted to celebrate that because that was the right thing to do. So really, helping create a culture where your teams actually end up making each one accountable for the culture and accountable to results and accountable to team. And we really, one of the moments I loved was when I was trying to import this, of course, over to Europe, and I wasn't sure I got it right. But one day we had a young SDR on our team, had just joined, and she had to hit her quota, and she genuinely asked me if she could credit her next SQL to her colleague, who was one away from hitting their quota. So unfortunately, we didn't do it. You might ask, do we have sales accelerators? Because why would you ever do that? But we did. And that was just a testament to the fact that we, one, hired the right people, and 2, had really built a strong culture where people just really wanted to win together. So finally, I'll bring it into leadership, where I think leading with authenticity is a really important aspect of building the right culture, but also empowering your people and keeping them focused on the right things. It's a pretty chunky topic, and I know that there have been other speakers at this event who have spent a whole session on it, but I'll talk through 3 things. One is being open with what you don't know. I moved to London, as you can tell from my accent. I don't necessarily know the landscape very well, and certainly spent some time butchering names of towns that my sales reps were from, as well as maybe even a high street brand now and then. But I really needed them to help me understand the landscape and not pretend that I knew more than I did about how to sell in Europe. I simply needed to support and help them sell a product that I knew a little bit of how to sell. And then the other thing was finding unscripted moments. And I think this is if you're running sales teams, you're probably in a few unscripted moments throughout your day. But part of this is finding unscripted moments to access senior leadership where your teams may not necessarily have accessibility to leadership beyond more scripted moments like all hands where they're sharing visions, et cetera. So things like Ask Me Anythings are great ways to actually share what's really on their mind. And that was a really helpful piece in sort of creating connective tissue to our senior leadership team, who sat in San Francisco, for teams that were way over across the ocean. And then finally, I think the other level of authenticity is vulnerability. And this is the hard part. I mean, we all live in the unknown. And if you're a fast-growing organization, you're constantly in this new period of unknown nearly every day. And you have to make decisions based on imperfect data nearly every day. So you're going to make mistakes. I made many throughout my career, and you have to be sort of clear and compassionate about those mistakes that you've made, and certainly try not to make them again, make them learnings. But I think part of this is finding a way to weave vulnerability into your sales leadership style in a role where you're asked to be confident all the time. In fact, we're on a conference called Sales Confidence, but so it's not natural, right, to have vulnerability, but it's a really important part of, I think, the trickle down, which is once you lead with vulnerability, once you lead with authenticity, it brings authenticity in your people. And then your people come to work feeling like their true selves. And they're able to execute playbooks without acting like robots and acting like themselves. And that actually breeds confidence. So it comes full circle. So just to bring this home, so 3 things that I think beneath the playbooks will help you execute playbooks and pioneer execution across scale teams of playbooks. 1 is prioritizing for your people, figuring out the right frameworks and rubric for interviewing and hiring the right people, building a sales culture within your culture. And thirdly, leading with authenticity.